It seems that my younger sister has also been reincarnated. In her previous life she fell deeply in love with the crown prince of the Beijing circle. They skipped classes, fought, and raced cars together. In the end she died in a heavy rainstorm for him. And she blamed all of this on me. After being reincarnated she proposed to our parents to transfer me into the worst class where the crown prince was. Sister, it's your turn to be bullied by him and have a tortured relationship with him this time. I smiled. She may have been reincarnated but her brain clearly hasn't. Even if she lived 100 more lives she still wouldn't be worthy of being my opponent. In my previous life I was tricked back home by my adoptive parents under the pretext of a family banquet and beaten to death. Before I died their hideous faces were still in front of my eyes. We only kept you for Luna's sake. Now that she's gone, what's the point of you being alive? My head was hit hard with a baseball bat. The flowing blood blurred my vision. I suddenly opened my eyes in the darkness. The unusually clear scene in front of me made me stunned for 2 seconds. It was a familiar sunny room. My adoptive mother and sister were sitting in front of me. Then I immediately heard the anxious voice of my adoptive mother. Luna, what on earth is going on? Your teacher called and said that you wanted to apply for a class transfer, and it's that worst class at the bottom of the grade. My sister Luna across from me slowly raised her head. Class transfer? Class transfer? She blinked her eyes as if suddenly realizing something. She looked around and then pointed at me. Mom, the teacher made a mistake. I meant to transfer my sister to another class. There are so many underachievers in class 13. Sister has always been helpful, so she must be happy to go and help them, right? In her previous life Luna fell in love with Giovanni, the crown prince of the Beijing circle, at first sight. Just 2 months after school started she cried and begged to transfer to class 13 where he was. That was the worst class at the bottom of the whole grade. My adoptive mother had always doted on her and couldn't resist her request, so she agreed. As a result Luna was entangled with Giovanni for 7 years. In the end she even died in a heavy rainstorm while drag racing after drinking. In my previous life I hardly had any interaction with Giovanni. We only exchanged a few words during a few encounters after graduation. However, Luna regarded me as a thorn in her side. She had always stubbornly believed that Giovanni's on and off relationship with her was because he had me his first love in his heart. Now looking at the malicious and hateful gaze she cast on me that she couldn't hide, I suddenly understood. So Luna was also reincarnated. Hearing what she said, my adoptive mother turned to look at me. Luna's right. I'll go to the school to handle the class transfer procedures for you today. It was an unquestionable tone. I knew that although out of gratitude to my father the couple of the Luna family adopted me, but from the beginning to the end they only regarded me as a servant at Luna's disposal. They never really treated me as their daughter. In her previous life when Luna cried and begged to transfer classes, my adoptive mother was worried and originally wanted me to go with her, but Luna firmly disagreed and my adoptive mother gave up. Afterwards Luna even came to show off to me smugly. Don't think I don't know. When you were in the violin competition, Giovanni even skipped classes to watch you. Do you think I would give you the chance to be with him day and night? I looked at her stupid look and didn't say a word. Giovanni came to watch my violin competition? What a joke. He probably didn't even know how many strings a violin has. I spread that rumor in a roundabout way just to prevent Luna from dragging me down. But now that she's been reincarnated it might not be a bad idea for me to play with her on a different track. That night Luna quietly entered my room. In this family I wasn't allowed to lock my room door. Because I wasn't permitted to have any privacy. She stood beside my bed looking at me inch by inch with her cold and venomous eyes. Finally she suddenly laughed. Sister, it's your turn to be bullied by him and have a tortured relationship with him this time. I don't know if she had greeted someone in advance. The next day as soon as I walked into the classroom door of class 13 with my school bag, a book was thrown at me. I slightly tilted my head and dodged it. The next second a lazy voice came from not far ahead. Who allowed you to dodge? Giovanni was lazily leaning on the chair with his legs crossed and resting on the table looking at me arrogantly. Forget it. I'll give you a chance. Pick up the book, hand it to me respectfully, and let me throw it at you again. Then I'll let you go this morning." Hearing him say that, my eyelashes trembled. I bent down to pick up the book from the ground and then walked towards him step by step. There were several of Giovanni's brothers standing beside him, and they all looked at me with contempt and undisguised malice. I smiled and said, "Is it like this?" While speaking, I fiercely smashed the hardest spine part of the book in my hand onto his nose. "Ah!" Giovanni jumped up from the chair. He covered his nose that was bleeding profusely and suddenly showed a cold and sinister smile at me. "You bitch, how dare you hit me? You're doomed." The faces of his brothers around him didn't look good, and they were about to surround me. Fortunately, at this time the teacher entered the classroom. "This is Stella, the new transfer student in our class, who ranked second in the entrance examination. I hope everyone will get along well in the future and learn from Stella." "Oh, an excellent student." Giovanni sneered. "Teacher, don't worry. We will definitely get along peacefully with classmate Lou." The ways he bullied me were no different from those overused plots in novels. He just put thumbtacks on my stool and threw dead snakes and mice into my drawer. I would pull out the thumbtacks. I would also pick up the dead snakes and mice expressionlessly and throw them into Giovanni's arms. On the contrary, it made his face turn pale. After finding that these methods couldn't deal with me, he changed to the simplest and most direct violence. On the afternoon of that day, when school was over, I opened my math exercise book and found a small note inside. "They're going to take you to the equipment room." I stared at the note for a few seconds, then crumpled it into a ball and threw it into the trash can. Who could it be? In my previous life I heard that all the students in class 13 were underachievers with poor grades. But in this life, after I transferred to this class and observed, I found that it wasn't the case. The students in class 13 were vaguely divided into two groups. Apart from Giovanni and his several domineering brothers, the rest were mostly ordinary students from poor families or with various difficulties. Their living and learning spaces had been squeezed to almost nothing by the Crown Prince and his followers. My eyes swept across the few scattered people in the classroom. Finally, a girl named Ryan, sitting diagonally behind Giovanni, avoided my gaze in a flustered manner. I understood in my heart and pretended not to know as I picked up my school bag and stood up. "Hey, classmate Stella." After struggling for a long time, she still stopped me. "Let's accompany you when school is over." She and several girls beside her all summoned up the courage to look at me. I silently met their timid yet brave gazes for a moment. Then I suddenly smiled. "It's okay. Don't get involved." Just as I walked out of the classroom, I was pushed by Giovanni and his several brothers into the equipment room in the corner of the playground. There I saw a very familiar face. Luna. Giovanni stood beside her, nodding at me with his chin. "Is this the sister who relies on the kindness to your family and acts arrogantly at home?" "Yes." Luna replied faintly, "But you shouldn't bully her like this. I don't want to be the same as her." She put on a very stubborn and aloof posture, which was completely different from the her who cried and begged Giovanni not to break up in her previous life. After living another life, she also knew that Giovanni, that bastard, liked those who were indifferent to him more. Sure enough, seeing her like this, Giovanni felt even more sorry for her. Luna took a deep breath and then pretended to persuade. "Besides, my sister has learned the violin for so many years. Her hands are the most precious. The more precious something is, the more beautiful it is when it's destroyed, isn't it?" Giovanni sneered and waved to the two people who were holding me down. "Break her fingers one by one right here today. I want to make sure that she can never play the violin again in her life." Hearing Giovanni say that, the joy in Luna's eyes when she looked at me was almost overflowing and couldn't be concealed. They forcefully pushed me to the side of the parallel bars and picked up the heavy dumbbells on the ground. Just as they were about to smash them down, I suddenly said, "Idiot." "What did you say?" I looked at Giovanni with a smile. "If I were you, I wouldn't choose to do such a stupid thing at school during this critical period of the Giovanni family's equity distribution." His pupils suddenly shrank. I silently counted down in my heart, 3, 2, 1. The door of the equipment room was suddenly kicked open. However, the people who came in were not the ones I had arranged. I turned my eyes and looked at the several girls standing at the door in astonishment. I thought that the brave question they asked in the classroom just now was the limit of what they could do. But it wasn't. Ryan took a deep breath, held the arm of the girl beside her and raised the shabby old mobile phone in her hand. Her voice couldn't stop trembling, but it was full of determination. "I've already called the police." The deathly silence only lasted for a few seconds. Giovanni couldn't help but laugh. "Your name is Ryan, right? It seems that the lessons I gave you before weren't enough and now you still dare to jump out and uphold justice. Call the police? Don't you know who I am? Can the police control me?" Under his cold and mocking gaze, Ryan's face turned pale again and again. However, at this time another majestic female voice came from outside the door. "If the police can't control you, can I?" A woman in a dark blue silk dress walked in on high heels. "Giovanni, didn't I tell you that our family is in a critical period recently and not to cause trouble?" When Giovanni saw her, his originally arrogant aura disappeared immediately. "Sister." Vivian crossed her arms and looked at him coldly. "Let her go and go home." Giovanni gritted his teeth and said unwillingly, "Sister, it was she who, whatever it is, when doing things, you should pay attention to methods and choose the right time. I'm stopping you now, but it doesn't mean I'll always stop you in the future." "That's right. I called Vivian with an anonymous letter. Last month the old master of the Giovanni family passed away. The descendants fought fiercely for the equity he left behind. At this time any bit of evidence could become an excuse to make an issue of. Vivian wouldn't allow this younger brother to ruin her big plan, but she was also unwilling to be used by me like this." Before leaving, Vivian glanced at me emotionlessly as if looking at an ant on the roadside. The meaning in that gaze was self-evident. After the internal turmoil in the Giovanni family subsided, Giovanni could deal with me however he wanted. I met her gaze and silently mouthed, "See you next time." Luna beside me stared at me fixedly for a moment and then suddenly burst out laughing. "Vivian actually showed up here. I see. You're back too." She gave me a smug and provocative look. "But, what's the use of it? Now, I'm the one who's Giovanni's first love, and you're the one being bullied. After the internal problems of the Giovanni family are solved, let's see who can save you then." After she left arrogantly, only Ryan and the others and I were left in the equipment room. "Classmate Stella, since you're okay, we'll leave first." She clenched the old mobile phone with the peeling paint and forced a smile at me. "Wait." I stopped them. "Today the monthly exam papers were handed out. Don't you have any questions that you don't know how to answer and want to ask me?" Ryan paused in her steps and looked at me in disbelief. "Not just you guys. Other classmates in class 13 who have questions can all come and ask me." I smiled and put my hands on their shoulders. "We are originally a group, and we should be more united and make progress together, shouldn't we? In fact, in this era it's extremely rare for a phoenix to fly out of a poor family. Most of them are ordinary people like Ryan and the others who come from poor families and whose academic performance isn't outstanding. For them just living takes all their efforts. Yet they still have to endure the oppression and bullying from people like Giovanni. But why should we?" In the darkened equipment room I met the eyes of the several girls that were gradually brightening up, like sparks in the dark night. I looked at them and said word by word, "This world originally belongs to us ordinary people." The next day Giovanni didn't come to school. I knew that the internal struggle within the Giovanni family had reached a white-hot stage. He simply didn't have time to come to school. So it was only natural for me to take over the self-study classes of class 13. Those self-study classes and after-school hours that were originally dominated by Giovanni with his several lackeys, making it impossible for everyone to study in peace, all became the time for me to give everyone extra tutoring. In both my past life and this life I've put in 12 times the effort in studying. I burned the midnight oil, sorted out the key exercise sets, printed them out and distributed them to them. They worked hard on doing the exercises. Whenever they encountered something they didn't know, they would write it down and then I would answer them all together the next day. During this period, Giovanni's several good-for-nothing lackeys still tried to make trouble. They laughingly splashed paint on my blackboard writing and then looked at me provocatively. Don't think that just because Giovanni isn't here you can do whatever you want. The day he comes back will be the day of your doom. At my signal, Ryan's deskmate, a girl named Zhao Jia, silently closed the front and back doors of the classroom. Then everyone stood up and surrounded those people step by step. You don't seem to understand the situation. I raised the water cup in my hand and viciously smashed it into the face of the lackey who was the leader. Before that, maybe your doom will come a bit earlier. When the results of the monthly exam in the second month came out, the whole grade was in an uproar, because class 13, which had always been the bottom and worst class, this time its average score rushed to the third place. And it even occupied 2 places in the top 10 rankings of the grade. The school leaders soon got to know about this. They specifically went to the classroom of class 13 to ask what was going on. Ryan gave them the answer: it's all because of Stella, our class monitor. She's been tutoring all of us privately. Stella, the adopted daughter of the Luna family? I remember that she seemed to be the second in the entrance examination, right? She got the first place in the grade this time. Who put her in class 13? Some of the school leaders still had an impression of me. They asked Ryan, where is she now? On this day, it also happened to be the day when the internal turmoil in the Giovanni family subsided and Giovanni returned to school to attend classes. As a matter of course, he took people and blocked me on my way to school. In the dark alley outside the school gate, Giovanni kicked over a trash can. He smiled gloomily at me. Stella, did I ever say that when I came back, you'd be doomed? Luna stood aside and casually said a few words of persuasion. Don't go too far. It won't be easy to end things if it gets too big. Don't worry. Giovanni sneered. This time, my sister won't come to save her again. He took those lackeys who had been beaten by me before and forced their way towards me step by step. I heard that you got the first place in the grade this time? When your hands that can do exercises and play the violin are disabled, you'll probably cry bitterly, right? They forced their way over, grabbed my wrists, and were about to smash them against the rough wall beside us. When the school leaders followed Ryan and found me, this was the scene they saw. Stop it! Under the stern reprimand of the dean, Giovanni's lackeys subconsciously trembled and let go of their hands. It's school time. What are you doing here? Before Giovanni could say anything, I spoke first. Teacher, they said they were going to disable my hands. In the large conference room of the Teaching Affairs building, Giovanni and his group of lackeys were standing lazily, looking completely fearless. The principal coughed softly. We've already understood the whole story of this matter. It's true that classmate Zhou did something wrong, but fortunately we arrived in time and no serious consequences were caused. Let's each take a step back and let this matter pass like this. An obviously muddling through attitude. I smiled. Is that so? Then I asked classmate Giovanni to apologize to me. Isn't this request too much? Apologize to you? Giovanni beside me seemed to have heard the funniest joke in the world. Are you worthy? I'm not without surveillance either. In that case, let's call the police to handle it. I was at loggerheads with him and neither of us would give in. One was the so-called crown prince of the Beijing circle with a wealthy and powerful family. The other was the first in the grade who had achieved excellent results on her own and could also lead the whole class to make progress together. Once the police were called and the matter got big, it would be very bad for the school's reputation. The principal couldn't openly offend either side, so he could only ask the teacher to pull me aside to persuade me. Classmate Stella, we know that you've been wronged. It was our negligence that we didn't stand up for you in the previous matters. The school will award you the special first-class scholarship for this academic year. In addition, we will further strengthen the management and won't let any classmate in class 13 be wronged again. Is that okay? I couldn't help laughing. So the school knows that the classmates in class 13 usually have a hard time. An embarrassed look immediately appeared on the teacher's face. I enjoyed her being at a loss for words for a few seconds and then continued, however, since the teacher has said so, let's do it this way. Besides, I hope to change the name of this money and award it to everyone in our class 13 who has made great progress this time. Except for the Crown Prince and his followers. The school acted quickly and soon distributed scholarships to the classmates in class 13 in the name of rewarding the progressive group. When the news reached the class, Ryan, Arya, and the others had a big reaction. I don't want this money. Ryan looked at me, her eyes red. He should have apologized to you. If we had been a step late, your hands, we wouldn't have been late. The time to go to school and the time when the honor roll was announced were all calculated by me. I said, what's more, even if you hadn't come, they might not have been able to really do anything to me. People who are used to a life of luxury are most afraid of a desperate fight. Arya, the girl who had entered the top 10 of the grade with me this time, didn't say a word but just handed over the bank card in her hand. I pushed it back to her again. I don't lack this little money. I can earn it back by casually writing some course design codes for a few college students. And, don't have any psychological pressure. A casual apology is worthless. He's not sincerely repentant. What's the use of it? Only what can be grasped firmly in our hands is the real benefit. There was less than half a year left until the college entrance examination. For these girls from poor families, material gifts could allow them to focus more on their studies without distractions. In my remaining memories of my past life, after the college entrance examination results came out, there were very few people in the whole class 13 who could be admitted to undergraduate colleges. Everyone became the backdrop for the intense and tragic love story between Luna and Giovanni. Even 2 girls were beaten into the hospital by him because they had angered Giovanni, who was in a bad mood after arguing with Luna. They missed the college entrance examination that year. I think perhaps my rebirth wasn't just because of death. It was to help more people change their fates. But after this incident, Giovanni should hate you even more, right? Arya pinched the bank card and was silent for a while. She said worriedly, and your sister? She was obviously involved in these major incidents. I know they won't let it go easily. I smiled and rubbed her messy short hair. But I'll take care of all these. All you need to do is study hard. That day in the equipment room, you saved me once. I also want to save you once. That night I rarely dreamed of my past life. After the college entrance examination I moved out of the Luna family. Later I spent all day in the laboratory and the library and seldom went back. It wasn't until my second year of graduate school. When I followed my supervisor to an academic exchange meeting I ran into Giovanni by chance. He greeted me in the name of a high school classmate. And for the purpose of getting sponsorship for my project I told him about the development prospects of the project in my hands. The next day Luna came to me crying and shouting. She cursed me with hatred on her face. You bitch, why should you be the first love he can't forget? You're just relying on your face, right? I don't know what means you used. You're even doing scientific research. Maybe your supervisor was also slept with by you. I took a bite of the sandwich in my hand and raised my hand expressionlessly. Security. 2 security guards came immediately. This lady might have some mental problems. Please deal with it. After she was taken away crying and cursing, my adoptive mother called me more than 10 times that day. I didn't answer any of them. I told my senior sister and then moved into the research institute and spent all day in the laboratory. It wasn't until the project came to a temporary halt that I learned that Luna had an accident. My adoptive mother tricked me back in the name of the last family banquet after Luna's death. Then she and my adoptive father killed me. I suddenly opened my eyes. The moonlight leaked into the room, making it silvery white. The pain of having my skull cracked by a baseball bat seemed to still remain in my body. I stared at the moon for a moment and then slightly curled my lips. There won't be a next time. After the school intervened, Giovanni finally didn't dare to bully his classmates blatantly anymore. At the same time he and Luna were getting closer and closer. In this life Luna had played her part well and had the young master firmly in her grasp. I didn't know what she had said to him, but Giovanni's eyes when he looked at me were becoming more and more unfriendly day by day. There was a palpable malice in his gaze. He didn't target other classmates anymore because all his hatred was poured out on me. Soon the day of the college entrance examination arrived. Because of the household registration issue, Luna and I were not in the same examination room. Early in the morning, Luna kept pestering her adoptive parents to take her there. It's my first time to take such an important exam. I'm so nervous. I want Mom and Dad to accompany me. She held a glass of milk, smiling innocently. Anyway, my sister's examination room isn't far away. She has always been independent. Let her go there by herself. When I went out, the first golden ray of the morning sun broke through the clouds. When I turned into a quiet alley, the sky suddenly darkened. The next second, the loud roar of an engine came from far to near. A bright red sports car screeched to a halt, blocking my way. Giovanni got out of the car with a follower and looked at me with a smile. The third time, and I've caught you again. You took advantage of the kindness you did before and bullied Luna for so many years. Do you still think you can go to the exam intact today? I tightened the straps of my school bag on my back and looked at him expressionlessly. Giovanni, today is also the day of your college entrance examination. Ha ha ha. The college entrance examination, he burst out laughing. You still need an exam to dream of changing your fate. I was born at a height that you can never reach. I can get into the best school even without taking the exam. Do you think I'm the same as someone like you? Aren't you good at scheming and using underhanded means? Come on, let me see what kind of help you can get now. Oh, you're out of tricks. Everyone else has gone to take the exam. No one will come to save you. Suddenly a sharp pain hit my lower abdomen and my thoughts froze for a second. By the time I realized what was happening, he had already kicked me hard in the lower abdomen and I fell to the ground. I struggled to sit up and was about to stand up, supporting myself against the wall. He walked up to me step by step and looked down at me condescendingly. I've had enough. You lowlife, you're only fit to be my dog for the rest of your life. Who gave you the right to resist? This time I don't need anyone else to do it. I'll break your fingers one by one. He bent down and reached out to grab my wrist. I quickly grabbed his hair and slammed it hard against the wall behind him. Ah! In Giovanni's sudden heart-rending scream, his follower rushed over quickly and pushed me hard on the shoulders. My left shoulder hit the wall hard and I almost heard the sound of bones breaking. The intense pain hit me and I silently said, "Not enough," in my heart. Then I raised my arm and rubbed my forearm hard against the rough wall surface. It was bleeding profusely. Giovanni, who was curled up on the ground in pain, was helped up. As soon as he stood firmly, he saw this scene. He froze on the spot. What are you doing? The sun slowly moved to the west. When it shone down, the last bit of darkness in the alley was dispelled. I supported my slightly fractured left arm and smeared the dripping blood little by little. I tore open the not-so-deep wound a bit more and the blood dripped down, spreading a shocking patch on my skirt. Young master, you've been bullying classmates all day long during your 3 years in school and haven't studied seriously for a single day. I suppressed my slightly rapid breathing due to the pain and looked at him with a raised eyebrow. So this sentence that originally appeared in the textbook, I'll teach it to you now. The wrath of the common people can make blood splash 5 steps, and the whole nation will be in mourning. I even wondered if you were smart enough not to choose to do this today. Unfortunately, you're as hopelessly stupid as Luna. The wind blew over the exposed wound on my arm with a sweltering heat. The sharper pain made me laugh even more freely. So what if you were born in such a high position? Can you guarantee that you'll always be on top? The moment the words fell, 2 reporters carrying video cameras appeared at the entrance of the alley. The flashlights lit up one after another. They were aimed at the surveillance camera at the entrance that had been damaged in advance. They were aimed at my white skirt smeared with blood. They were aimed at my mangled arm. They were aimed at my red eyes and the teardrops falling one by one. What's going on here? Only then did Giovanni belatedly realize that he had fallen into my trap. I'm from the Giovanni family. I'm here to settle some personal grudges. He said coldly, if you still want to keep working in this business, get out of here. Hearing him say that, the 2 reporters put away their cameras. Giovanni thought his threat had worked and gave me a cold smile. But the next second they walked closer. Young master, there are always people in this world who aren't afraid of you. Are you so used to being flattered when you're in a high position that you don't realize this? The female reporter carefully avoided my injured left arm and grabbed my other hand. Let's go. Now that she could finally satisfy her desire for money under the pretext of her birthday, she was extremely excited and kept talking to the system nonstop. The time was very tight. The examinees had already entered the examination rooms. At this moment outside the gate, it was crowded with parents who had come to see their children off for the exam. There were also quite a few reporters who had come early and were waiting outside, preparing to take some materials about the college entrance examination. The car screeched to a halt in front of them. At this moment, everyone looked at me in astonishment as I pushed the car door open and rushed out, covered in blood. "Joe. Jean. Nan," I said word by word to the bright red sports car behind me. "Even if you're from the Giovanni family and the so-called young master of the Beijing Circle, what right do you have to stop me from taking the exam? Don't say you broke my arm. Even if I only have one breath left, I'll crawl in today and hand in my answer sheet. Or else, you can just kill me right here." He rushed out of the car suddenly, supporting himself on the edge of the car door, looking at me in shock and anger. From the reflection in his pupils, I could see what I looked like now. My hair was messy, my whole body was injured, and I was in a sorry state. But the blood-stained skirt was fluttering again, like a flag flapping vigorously in the wind. "What, are you afraid?" I curled my lips and moved my gaze from the two police cars that were quickly approaching behind him to him, showing a provocative smile. "Well, now I'm going in to take the exam." In the sweltering June, I sat in the examination room again, which didn't even have air conditioning. The wound on my arm was soaked with sweat, but the pain actually made my mind calmer and clearer. After the 2 exams on the first day were over, I went to the hospital to have my wound treated briefly. Ryan accompanied me. She had always been timid and weak, but this time she didn't shed a single tear. "Will it leave a scar?" I looked down. The doctor was using small tweezers to pick out the grains of sand from the wound one by one. "Maybe, but it doesn't matter at all because it's just a flesh wound. It just looks scary." I smiled with narrowed eyes. "That's the young master. If you want to make a big deal out of something, you always have to pay a price." After the wound was treated, I didn't go back to the Luna family that night. I stayed in a small hotel near the examination room for the night. Whether in my past life or this life, this exam wasn't very difficult for me. Moreover, I had the complete memories of my past life. The knowledge I had learned and the scientific research achievements I had made were all firmly engraved in my mind. They became an irreplaceable precious wealth. This was something that Luna, who was still obsessed with romantic relationships, would never have no matter how many times she was reincarnated. After the last exam was over, I went straight to the hospital. Lying in the ward, I took out my phone and, as expected, saw my name on the hot search. Hashtag the first in 3 mock exams but almost missed the college entrance examination. Hashtag Giovanni, I'm from the Giovanni family. Hashtag Stella is so cool. The scene where I confronted Giovanni covered in blood outside the examination room before the exam was prominently displayed at the top of the hot search. Oh my God, she was so injured but still came to take the college entrance examination. She was the first in the grade. She had been bullied by Joe all the time when she was at school. If she couldn't even take the college entrance examination, all her 3 years of hard work would be in vain. Is there anyone going to check out this Giovanni family? Are they really so lawless? I turned off my phone and looked at the 2 people in front of my hospital bed. Ryan was skillfully peeling the apple skin with a small knife in circles. Arya sat opposite me. Everyone wanted to come to see you, but they were afraid of disturbing you while you were recovering, so they asked us to represent them. It's not a serious illness. I can be discharged from the hospital tomorrow. I moved my shoulder and left arm that were in plaster and looked at her with a smile. How was the exam? Do you have the confidence to surpass me? Who wants to surpass you? She looked at me quietly. How could you be sure that those 2 reporters would definitely help you? It wasn't strange that she could ask such a question. Arya was the quietest but also the most perceptive person in the whole class 13. That day Giovanni's car and mine chased all the way to the outside of the examination site, and all the reporters and parents saw it. But in fact very few people reported on this matter. No one wanted to risk offending the Giovanni family to help someone who walked into the examination room covered in blood and might not even be able to finish writing the papers. But those two young and brave female reporters were different. Because, brave people will always be brave. Just people will always be just. In my past life a major incident happened in the school next to ours. A certain professor had been faking academic achievements for many years and embezzled hundreds of millions of funds, but was reported by dozens of his students in a joint letter. The ones who took the lead were two young and brave female reporters. One was named Nancy and the other was named Yvonne. In this life when I contacted them they were even still interns. After hearing my plan to make a big fuss about this matter they were both very puzzled. Since you guessed what he was going to do you could have completely avoided the danger. There was no need to put yourself at risk. On the phone Nancy's tone was full of puzzlement. Because I didn't want to just avoid him this one time. I lowered my eyes and looked at the butterfly knife I was playing with in my hand and chuckled. I'm not the only one he bullied. It wasn't just our class. If we're going to make a fuss we'll make a big one. The public opinion had been raging for more than half a month and reached its peak at the moment when the college entrance examination results came out. Because I scored nearly 20 points higher than in my previous life and won the title of the provincial top scorer of this year. My value increased layer by layer and finally it reached the point where the Giovanni family had to send someone with more say to negotiate with me. My adoptive parents called me and repeatedly ordered me to return to the Luna family. The moment I opened the door and saw Vivian I couldn't help laughing. Miss Jo, I said that day that we would meet again next time. She looked at me and the anger in her beautiful eyes swirled a few times before being replaced by the calmness of good upbringing. Stella, just state your terms directly. I pretended not to know and asked, what terms? My adoptive father suddenly slapped the table hard. Stop playing dumb. Stella, know when to stop. There was no need to think about it. The Luna family probably had already reached some agreement with the Giovanni family long ago. My adoptive mother also looked at me coldly. You came to our family when you were 10 years old. We've raised you for so many years. Do you want to repay kindness with enmity? Kindness? I couldn't help laughing as if I had heard some absurd joke. You adopted me because my father, a distant relative of your Luna family, died while saving you. You were afraid that the Luna family would be labeled as ungrateful, so you brought me back from the welfare home. Was it that in exchange for a life, I lived as a servant in your Luna family for 8 years, and now it turns out that I owe you instead? I lost my patience and stood up from the sofa. I turned around, packed my documents in the bedroom, put on my violin bag, and when I went out, Vivian was still sitting in her original position. She looked at me with undisguised hatred in her eyes. It was the malice that the superior felt towards the inferior who dared to offend her, a kind of malice that made her want to kill me immediately. I smiled and said, Miss, you must have guessed before you came here today that I wouldn't agree to the reconciliation, right? I just wanted to see if you were as stupid as I thought. She stood up. Stepping on high heels, she was a head taller than me, with a powerful aura. Those eyes looked down at me coldly. Now it seems that you really are. As for the saying that an ordinary man in a rage can do something extraordinary, it's just something to say. Don't you really believe it? She twitched the corners of her mouth and showed a freezing smile. You can see for yourself whether you can afford the consequences of offending the Giovanni family. In the end, this incident ended with the Giovanni family paying a huge price to suppress the public opinion. To avoid the limelight for the time being, Giovanni was sent to study abroad. And I went back to school with all the classmates in class 13 to receive our honors. In this year's college entrance examination, all the students in class 13, which was originally the worst class at the bottom, passed the undergraduate admission line without exception. Aria was admitted to the top university next to mine with a score of 692 points. The principal was so excited that his cheeks flushed. He held my hand and shook it again and again, saying that he would give me a large scholarship as a reward. I smiled and said, "Principal, you should also know what happened outside the examination room before, right?" He was suddenly stunned on the spot. "Compared with the scholarship, I hope the school can handle things fairly and strengthen management from now on. At least after this, there won't be another Giovanni who treats human lives as worthless." He laughed dryly and responded twice. I knew that after the incident on the day of the college entrance examination, the Education Bureau had already sent people to investigate the previous bullying incidents. Judging from the degree of their attention, there would be a fair and just learning environment here for at least the next few years. When I left the school, I ran into Luna. She looked at me with almost deeper hatred than in her previous life. "Stella, how dare you? How dare you?" She gritted her teeth and looked at me as if she wished she could stare 2 holes in me. "Do you think you can turn the world upside down just because you've lived another life? If you dare to offend the Giovanni family, I'm afraid you won't even know how you'll die in the future. Don't bother yourself about this." I curved the corners of my mouth, but there was no smile in my eyes. "Or, you can come and try on behalf of the Giovanni family first. Find out what the price is for killing me." In September, I entered the School of Optoelectronics at Tsinghua University. Because of the remaining heat brought by the previous public opinion storm, my every word and deed was under the spotlight of countless people. This popularity not only enabled me to be temporarily safe within the sphere of influence of the Giovanni family, it also allowed me to contact my previous mentor at the fastest speed. "Teacher Tan, for this year's World University Student Hardware Programming Competition, I would like to choose you as my supervisor." She looked at me for a moment, and the gaze behind her glasses gradually softened. "I know you're the student who dared to challenge the Giovanni family. After I won the gold medal of this year's competition without any dispute, I picked a time when there was no one else around and handed the chip research results, which were several years ahead of the current progress, to my mentor in advance. This project is currently in an absolutely confidential state." In the empty office, she looked at me sternly with a scrutinizing gaze. "And you're just a freshman now. Stella, I need an explanation. You can think that I'm exceptionally gifted, or I didn't drink the Mingpa soup when I was reincarnated?" I smiled. "I know the doubts in your heart. You can freely verify the experimental data and results I handed in, and you can also freely investigate my family background. I just want to do my best. After all, in this era when science and technology are developing rapidly all over the world, you should know better than I do the value of being able to avoid detours and taking the lead in a certain technology among all countries." I've always been a cautious and thorough person, and I knew that she would really go and investigate. So I waited patiently. About a week later, she called me to her home. The first question she asked me was the same one that Arya had asked me in the ward. "How did you know that these 2 journalists would definitely help you?" But it was also a bit different. "You didn't contact anyone else but went directly to them. Without trial and error, it means that you were very sure from the beginning about what they would do. You didn't even go to great lengths to find their contact information. And even earlier, you also sent an anonymous letter to the Giovanni family." In the quiet room with the curtains drawn, I calmly met her gaze. "My mother passed away when I was very young. Later, after my father died, I was fostered in the Luna family. For a long time, I didn't know what love and tolerance from elders were like. Until I met my mentor in my previous life. At that time, I was busy with a paper to be published and stayed in the laboratory for 3 days, with my eyes red from staying up all night. During the dinner gathering of our research group in the evening, I was still calculating data in my mind. When I was lost in thought, she suddenly tapped my head with the end of her chopsticks. "You're so absent-minded while eating. People who don't know might think that I'm squeezing you too much." I immediately came to my senses. She then casually pinched my cheek. "Why don't you smile more? You're so young, yet you're not as energetic as I am, an old lady." And in this life she looked into my eyes. After a long while she suddenly said, "When I'm not doing scientific research, I sometimes read novels, about time travel and reincarnation and such. Although they're a bit fantastical, I have to say, they're quite interesting. I blinked my eyes and said, really? I don't read them much. I'll arrange for people to verify the things you handed in as soon as possible, and then reasonably promote the process of the project. She continued. As for you, after you finish the basic courses, I'll apply to the school to let you come to my laboratory in advance. If you have any other difficulties, just let me know. When it came to this, I perked up. I took a step forward, held her hand and said sincerely, teacher, there really is. With my supervisor's help, I successfully sold several large algorithm software programs I wrote. While accumulating a considerable amount of funds, I also had a news channel that was many times more informed than before. A certain company even sent me an invitation to a business dinner. I went there with the idea of getting a few more business deals, but I ran into Luna there. She was wearing a snow-white dress and a string of round pearl necklaces around her neck following behind Vivian. She was enjoying being the center of attention along with her. I remembered that in her previous life her relationship with Giovanni was not accepted by the Giovanni family. Vivian even hated her extremely and had stated on many public occasions that the Giovanni family would never accept a girl from a small family like her. It seemed that in this life she had smoothly integrated into the Giovanni family. I smiled sarcastically, handed out a business card and was about to leave when Luna stopped me. Stella. I turned around and found that she had left Vivian's side and walked up to me alone. Holding a wine glass, she put on an innocent look. Is there any feud between sisters that can't be resolved overnight? Instead of going around promoting your little things to make money, you might as well come and beg me. Beg you for what? She immediately laughed heartily. I'm now Giovanni's fiancée, recognized by the Giovanni family. What do you think I'm asking you to beg for? When she said this, there was almost uncontrollable pride in her eyes. I suddenly understood. She came to me specifically to show off. In this life she finally got what she wanted and became a person recognized by the Giovanni family. She was so stupid that I didn't even want to say another word to her. I turned around and left. She shouted angrily behind me, do you think you can be complacent for long? The storm of that incident has long passed. When Giovanni returns to the country, no one will be able to save you. Stella, I'll watch you die with a smile. I saw Giovanni again at an industry exchange meeting that I went to with Aria. 3 years had passed since the turmoil during the college entrance examination. Aria and I were walking together in the huge exhibition hall of the industry exchange meeting. Several beams of light leaked in through the dome. She turned her head to look at me and said, this morning, Xiang called me and said that she passed the interview and can go for an internship next week. Everyone is very grateful that you tutored us for almost a year and pulled us all up to the undergraduate admission line as a group. Now you're using your connections to help us all get recommended for internship opportunities internally. She paused for a moment. Seeing that I seemed to be concentrating on adjusting the robotic arm beside me, her voice suddenly dropped. Sometimes I feel like this is a dream. Because that night I dreamed that it wasn't you who transferred to class 13, but your sister. She was bullied by Giovanni, but instead of resisting, she fell in love with him. And then, before the college entrance examination, they had a quarrel, and that afternoon Xiang and I just happened to pass by. I suddenly turned my head and patted the back of her hand, interrupting what she was going to say next. It's adjusted. Come and try it. Aria immediately stopped talking and manipulated the robotic arm, smoothly typing out a series of codes on the keyboard. Don't think about it anymore. You also said that it was just a dream, I said. Where you are now is the reality. Also, I didn't recommend you guys for free. I used so many connections because I want you to do something for me. You can tell everyone that it can be regarded as a fair deal. It's not that you owe me anything. She stared at me blankly. She had always been not good at expressing herself. At this moment, even if she wanted to say something, she probably couldn't organize her words. I was just about to remind her that it was time to leave when suddenly I heard a very familiar male voice. Lu, Sui, and I froze in my movement and looked up. I met Giovanni's sharp gaze not far away. Probably because he had been tempered abroad for 3 years, he was more calm than before. His malice was restrained and he just greeted me with a smile. Long time no see. So it's young Master Zhou, I smiled. 3 years have passed. I thought you had died in a gunfight. His expression didn't change, but the hostility in his eyes grew a bit heavier. I was just about to remind her that it was time to leave when suddenly I heard a very familiar male voice. Lu, Sui, and he probably thought he was quite imposing when he said this sentence. However, at this time the robotic arm beside me turned half a circle counterclockwise and hit the back of his head. What are you doing? Giovanni's defense was broken in an instant and he glared at Arya beside me with a murderous look. She remained calm and quietly turned the robotic arm back. Sorry, it was a slip of the hand and an accidental operation. Giovanni was a person who couldn't hold his temper. Soon I waited for his move. That afternoon suddenly someone accused me and my supervisor of academic fraud together. The reason was, she's just an undergraduate student who hasn't graduated yet. How could she possibly make such a chip and publish 3 papers in top journals in a row? The confrontation outside the examination room back then was brought up again. Only this time the public opinion reversed. It was said that I deliberately hyped it up and was building a persona for myself. After all, she was able to take the exam in the end and even got the top score. No matter how you look at it, it's incredible, right? Yeah. If she's really an ordinary person who offended the Giovanni family, could she still live such a good life now? I heard that as soon as she entered the school, she won the gold medal in that year's World Hardware Design Competition. Which ordinary student can do that? Her supervisor must have problems too. Controlling public opinion was the strength of families like the Giovanni family. 3 years ago they just fell behind because I seized the opportunity first. This time it was obvious that they wanted to solve the hidden trouble once and for all and make it impossible for me to turn over. All the projects in the hands of my supervisor and I were suspended, and we were even suspended from school for investigation. Because the matter has become too big, this is a routine investigation. When being taken away she was still comforting me. Don't be afraid. As long as we are upright, we don't need to worry about the shadows. I asked her, Teacher, do you believe me? She calmly stared at me in the setting sun. If you lengthen the timeline of a thing, lengthen it until every keynote in the past is magnified and see what everyone has done, you will find some very interesting things. Just like playing chess. Every move may not play a role immediately. But a long, long time later, when everything is connected in series, I tapped my chin with my fingertips. You will find that the actions back then were not as simple as just having the current purpose. In the following half a month I didn't do anything and let the public opinion ferment. I even deliberately left some flaws, making the people of the Giovanni family think that there were really problems with my papers and achievements. So they rushed at me even more fiercely like bloodthirsty beasts. Even Luna jumped out and tearfully accused me in front of the media. She said that I had been adopted by their Luna family for so many years, but I repaid kindness with ingratitude. Relying on being the older sister, I bullied her unscrupulously. After a lively commotion for a while, it finally reached the point where the whole nation was paying attention to this matter and demanding that we give an explanation. Then I held a press conference with a live broadcast across the whole network. The people who interviewed me were Nancy and Yvonne. Under the focus of their cameras I opened the papers in my hand. These are some records of my writing course designs for college students since high school. This is a detailed explanation of my complete thinking on the research and development of the TW2108 chip this time. This is the first draft, the second draft, the final draft of my paper and all the experimental data. As for whether the incident outside the college entrance examination room back then was hyped up, everyone can watch this video below. The video projection was turned on playing the short video on that path back then. The zoomed-in shots were clear enough to magnify every detail. The surveillance camera at the intersection that had been damaged in advance. My white skirt that was stained in patches. My bloody arm. My red eyes and the tears falling down one by one. And in the shot Giovanni, who suddenly turned his head with a fierce expression. I'm from the Giovanni family. I'm here to deal with some personal grudges. If you still want to work in this field, get out of here. Click. The screen went dark. I collected myself and continued facing the camera. I know that the people of the Giovanni family have always hated me, thinking that I should be like everyone they had bullied and suppressed before, turning into a speck of dust and disappearing in the long river of time. But I just don't want to accept my fate. Why can you get away with campus bullying? Why can you turn lies into truth by spreading rumors? This world doesn't belong to your Giovanni family. It belongs to every citizen. The sky is clear and bright, and there will always be a time when the clouds disperse and the sun shines through. Now, I'm going to report the Giovanni family in my real name, reporting that they committed intentional homicide, used improper means in business competition and monopolized the market. Several photos were shown on the big screen. They were several contract documents stamped with the official seal of the Giovanni family. There were also countless photos taken from hidden angles showing a life of luxury. Everyone in the pictures was wealthy and powerful. They were chatting happily with people like Giovanni and Vivian. There were even photos of Giovanni's meetings with some people during his 3 years of studying abroad. Before all the evidence was completely shown, the live broadcast was forcibly cut off. But I knew that everything I said and presented would spread rapidly on this huge internet. I sat in the room with Nancy and Yvonne. The light shining on our faces was slightly hot. I rubbed my cheeks and smiled. Like I said, I don't want to just avoid him this time. If we're going to make a fuss, we'll make a big one. The internal struggle within the Giovanni family back then involved far more than just a bit of equity. Because the interests involved were too great and there couldn't be any mistakes, Vivian came in person to stop Giovanni's stupid actions. That day, after leaving the equipment room, she took him to the top suite of a high-end private club and negotiated a deal involving the future. With the help of those people, they won the final victory in the war within the Giovanni family. Later, the incident during the college entrance examination got big. In the name of lying low, Vivian conveniently sent Giovanni abroad, which was more convenient for making contacts and cooperation. He came back this time because everything was ready. After pulling my supervisor and me down, the people they arranged would take over our projects and then give the results to others as gifts. That day, when I asked my supervisor if she believed me, she was silent for a moment and then asked me, "What should I do to cooperate with you?" Then I gave her a list. Combining the experiences of 2 lifetimes not only enabled me to avoid many wrong ideas, it also allowed me to see the problems that had been hidden in the dark and couldn't be answered or understood in my past life. So I sold the software to some enterprises that had cooperative relations with the Giovanni family, and then used my connections to recommend the classmates in Class 13 for internships internally. When they went to socialize with the marketing department, they could always take some useful photos after taking many twists and turns. When you deduce the process from the result, many things can be traced. It's also more convenient to find the evidence that hasn't been completely destroyed. The Giovanni family knew that things were going badly and still tried to suppress the public opinion with the previous means. But this time they were the ones who stirred up the heat. How could I let them have their way? The building is about to collapse. It was a drizzly and rainy day when Vivian, the highest authority in the Giovanni family, and Giovanni were taken away for investigation. Among them the Luna family, which had a deep cooperation with them and had even reached the stage of an arranged marriage, couldn't escape either. My adoptive parents loved Luna to the extreme. In my past life they killed me because of her death. In this life, knowing that they couldn't get away, they took all the blame upon themselves. And they helped Luna get away. But apart from saving her life, she had nothing left. That afternoon I walked out of the gate of the Scientific Research Institute with an umbrella. Suddenly a figure rushed towards me. I narrowly avoided it and saw the person's face clearly. It was Luna. She fell and sat in the puddles on the ground, asking me resentfully, "Why? In the past life you did nothing but became his beloved first love. In this life I've already become an irreplaceable existence in his heart, just like you did. But why? Why did you have to destroy him and the entire Giovanni family? Stella, you bitch, why wasn't it you who died? With a snap, I slapped her hard across the face. I threw away the umbrella, pinched her face in the rain, and said word by word, because it's never been me who should die. Was it me who destroyed the Luna family? Clearly they committed murders, set fires, colluded with the enemy, and sold out the country. They brought destruction upon themselves. And the young master of the Beijing Circle, what era is it now? Things like young masters should go to hell along with the feudal remnants. Luna, don't you understand? You're just too stupid and short-sighted. Do you know how many things can be done by taking advantage of the information gap in a new life? You can save the future of an entire class, advance the development process of a certain core technology in our country by 5 years ahead of the world, and remove a cancerous tumor long in advance to avoid huge losses. To put it more exaggeratedly, you can change the whole world, while you only think about how to become a man's first love and make him fall head over heels in love with you. You're really hopelessly stupid. She sat in the rain, raised her head, and stared at me blankly. The rain was falling harder and harder, washing over us and blurring the whole world. After a while, Luna suddenly burst into loud sobs. After the siblings of the Giovanni family were sentenced to death, I heard that they still tried to find a way to save themselves. Giovanni actually managed to get some people to help him and escaped from prison on the way to the execution ground. Later, the police chased them all the way to the wharf. By the seaside, Giovanni was shot more than 20 times and died on the spot. My adoptive parents from the Luna family were sentenced to 20 years in prison. After the news came out, Luna committed suicide. Perhaps she felt that she had nothing left and could never turn things around, or perhaps she still held the idea that she could be reincarnated again after death. But, who knows? I turned off the computer and went to the window to wash my hands. Through the window, I saw Ryan and Arya standing outside the gate of the Scientific Research Institute with the classmates from Class 13, waving at me. I turned to look at my tutor and said, "I'd like to ask for leave tonight. There's a group activity. It sounds like I usually don't let you participate in activities." She gave me a sidelong glance. "Go ahead quickly. You're young. Don't be a workaholic and stay in the laboratory all the time." I waved goodbye to her, got up, and went downstairs. When the elevator door opened, in the spacious first-floor lobby with a wide view, the fiery red rays of the setting sun spread out without reservation. My friends were waiting for me ahead. And my future path was full of brightness.